interesting that when you have a passion about something that you want to share it with everybody. So I'm hoping today that you'll find out a bit more about these silk postcards that are an aspect of World War I that is probably unknown to most of you, and yet was for the soldiers and their families an important part of their time at war. In fact, you could say that postcards were the social currency, a means where the soldier and those at home could communicate. At this time, letters and postcards were the only methods of communication for the families and their loved ones at home. One of the examples of this communication is written on the back of the Forget-Me-Not card. Just a line in answer to your very welcome letter. I have not had a chance of answering it before, as if we've been in the firing line and have just come out for a rest. Bob Hawes has gone to hospital with shell shock and he is pretty bad. It's interesting, even at this early stage, that shell shock was something that was known. I found that quite interesting. Another card says, you are quite a big girl now. Here are some eyepieces from a Fritz gas helmet for a souvenir. I picked them up in some old trenches. I could have plenty of German rifles, but I had no way of carrying them. From your loving daddy. There were various types of postcards, and these are an example of the Australian ones. These belong to John Stone, which he has very kindly donated to the War Memorial. But my interest doesn't lie in this, it really lies in silk postcards. And I'll give you a little background of how I started. I think my collection, I don't know whether I'm game enough to say this, actually exceeds the war memorials now. Over the years I became more particular, especially about the quality of the card, and I also then tended to go for cards which had a message written on the back, because I think that's a really important historical and personal thing to know as well. As time goes by, the cards become older and their availability becomes less, and they become more expensive. When I first started, about $10 is what you'd sort of pay for a good quality card, and I recently saw one on eBay for $99. And just out of interest, the Australian Commonwealth card, the one on the left hand side there, I bought for $17, and I just recently saw it on eBay for $40. The Remember card was purchased for $9, and it's on sale now for $48. And the ASC card I paid $5 for, because it's got quite a lot of foxing on it there. It's now $39. So maybe my children might be a little bit more interested in these cards. And so to the history. Silk postcards first appeared at the Paris exhibition in 1900, but they reached the height of their popularity at the time of World War I and became a unique wartime industry. Silk postcards were really a product of the war. Nuns in convents around the soon-to-be invaded areas of Belgium and northern France were accustomed to embroidering church vestments and articles for sale to visitors in the convent. With the demand from soldiers for souvenirs, the nuns organised the refugee workers and the local women to embroider strips of material that would become postcards. This cottage industry added income for the wives of the French and Belgian soldiers, whose wages were very low, and was also a new source of revenue for the nuns. They also provided a beloved keepsake for the troops' loved ones. Very soon after the instigation of this cottage industry, the postcard companies began to employ women to produce silks on a rough assembly line basis. One soldier writes, "This is the card that I've been trying for so long to get for you to match those sent home to Mater and Dad for Christmas." Another one says, "I'm sure that you will like these cards. They are made in France and are all the rage among the boys. Best of love, Frank, 1917. The cards fell into three categories. Patriotic, and they say, "We shall win." The "We shall win" card there says, "Just from this card you may take the feeling of every soldier over here." Sentimental, "True, it is only a card, but were it of gold, my wishes could not be more sincere for many happy returns, trusting you and Dad are well as it leaves me, your humble servant." How many times are you going to have your children call you that, your humble servant? Yeah. Another kind of sentiment, "Just to wish you a happy birthday. I have not heard from you for some time. I think it's time you wrote again." The third category is military. There were many variations of postcards showing flags. All the major Allied powers were represented. The British Empire, France, Russia, Italy, Japan and Japan. In all there were 25 nations that were in that Allied group. There were associated powers that supported the Allies but kept their autonomy in decision making rather than being given orders from the British High Command that virtually ran the war from the War Office. The USA is an example of this associated power. The cards sold for a few francs. In 1918, according to the price list for the Forces canteen, a pint of beer cost 1 franc, a box of matches was 60 centimes, a tin of OXO cubes was 75 centimes, and a packet of biscuits was 20. And a British man was paid, a British soldier was paid 1 shilling and 8pence a day. Just by comparison, Australian troops were paid 6 shillings a day, hence the saying, the 6-bob tourist. Interestingly, 1 shilling was retained by the government until the soldier was discharged. So it was like a bit of a forced saving for them. So they're spending a few francs to buy one of these cards when you can see that really they haven't got a whole lot of money. Just as a little interesting sideline, about 1,300 Indigenous men enlisted and were paid the same wages and lived under the same conditions. But in 1914 there was still a substantially of European origin rule that applied to enlistment. Some Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders were accepted for enlistment if they haven't lived in a tribal environment. In 1917 the rule was modified to accept anyone who had one parent of European origin. A soldier could purchase cards in small shops behind the lines in nearby towns. In regimental canteens they were also available, or they could go to the sewers themselves and buy them from the sewers themselves. One soldier writes, "Hope you like this card. It has left me with 2pence to spend. Enough for me, you will say." The cottage industry produced many beautiful and often intricately designed postcards. Originally the design was embroidered on a starched strip of organdy, which was very sheer, crisp cotton, or onto a silk organza, and they used coloured silk threads. Identical designs were worked side by side up to 25 times, as you can see here. And they were on a continuous strip of cloth. You can sometimes find these and you'll know that they're hand done because there's just slight variations in them, as you can probably see even in seeing those. You can just see the slight variations in there. A French woman reported that a simple design could take 4 to 8 hours to complete. That was just for one completed postcard. Now, I don't know anyone who's done embroidery, but I think that's pretty good, 4 to 8 hours. That's a lot of embroidery for 4 to 8 hours. Various types of embroidery stitches were incorporated into the work, and for those who are into embroidery, there's satin stitch, that was the predominant stitch. There was running stitch, stem stitch, back stitch and seed stitch. And the thread was an untwisted silk, hence the name. When all the designs were completed, the finished work was collected and sent to be assembled into postcards. A frame was secured over the top of the trim design that had already been mounted onto a postcard backing. These frames had various patterns, many of which were embossed, as you can see there, all the various different types of embossing that they've got on there. All the cards came in a semi-translucent envelope, which is like one of these. So they came in an envelope like this, and that was to protect them and withstand the rigours of dispatch by post. No postcards ever been franked or stamped because there was free postage after August 1914 in the military mail pouches for anyone who was on active service. Prior to that it was 2pence, but after that in 14. The envelopes were quite scarce, as most recipients threw them out or kept it just to keep the postcards, you know, as you probably do now, just throw these envelopes out. Towards the end of the war, the demand became so high that the designs for the postcards were produced on small machine-operated looms. The largest block discovered consisted of 400 cards, all with the same repetitive design. There were 2 types of cards, a piece of embroidered silk mounted on a card, as we saw before, or these kind, 2 pieces of silk embroidery sewn and mounted to form a pocket. Now that it contained either a little message on that card there, or sometimes a silk handkerchief, and they would come in a card. It's about the size of today's Christmas tag, so it's about this size here. The message was either a drawing, usually of something very serene, and as they are up there, or a message of sentiment or patriotic nature. So, patriotism was the big thing. The postcard size was about 5.5 by 3.5 inches, which is about 13.5 by 6.5 centimetres. Smaller than today's 6 by 4, so just a little bit smaller. Some of the designs are Australian themes, such as the Rising Sun badge, Australian flora and fauna. One of these says, "Christmas and New Year greetings from your Anzac. Our chief worry just at the present is the weather. We have rain every day and sometimes snow, and there is mud everywhere." And the other one says, "If I get back, I think I will not be frightened of a gun and be a better shot." And the other one says, "I am becoming a dinkum soldier. I have seen 21 aeroplanes up together and see them all day here, and at night we see anything between 12 and 20 of them." Which again I found quite interesting. The other category that they go into is greetings to relatives. A couple of these ones read, "Just a few lines as usual. I am leaving for the trenches any minute, and we are fully equipped, ready to fall in to move off. I had a hot bath and put on a clean lot of clothing and got a clean change in my pack, some writing paper and other items." The typical images were the birds, and there were swallows that meant to fly home to you, up on the left there. Horseshoes and 4-leaf clovers, which were symbols of good luck. And butterflies, meaning new life. I love the colours in those. I think the colours are just beautiful. And then we go into the next one, the Victorian language of flowers. Well, that developed a language all of its own, and by selecting certain types of flowers, you were able to pick some subjects that were not discussed as social etiquette demanded. Some depictions meant the pansy, meaning you occupy my thoughts, forget-me-nots, true love, cornflowers, friendship, daisies, royal love, violets, I'll always be true, and the poppy. Interestingly, during the war, the poppy, in this sort of circumstances, represented beauty and peace, and it was only after World War I that it came to mean remembrance. Sometimes several types of flowers were embroidered on the same card. Quite often the flowers were chosen because of their colours, the white daisy, the blue cornflower and the red poppy, and they were the 3 colours of France and the British Empire. Roses, they were a complete list of meanings. They had a whole new thing. Red roses represented love, pink roses represented gratitude or admiration, and yellow roses represented friendship. I often wonder if a soldier posting these cards was aware of their presumed meanings, or otherwise he might have got himself in deep water by sending mixed messages. One of the cards to my dear friend, "Dear Dorrie, wrote recently to you from the trenches. This place is an improvement on the Dardanelles. One had a beautiful hot bath yesterday and a change of underclothes. What casualties we get now. They are mostly from shrapnel and whiz-bangs that explode." That was in 1916. Cards meant for fathers and brothers were often masculine images such as anchors and flags. One soldier laments, "There are no women here, only soldiers and horses and motors." Other greeting cards were sent to mothers, wives, loved ones, and those usually depicted flowers of some kind. One very poignant message reads on the "God bless you" card, "Just a simple little card, but with these 3 words on the face. And yet I do not think I could express my thoughts any better if I had employed every word in my vocabulary. May you be kept under the shadow of his wing." Isn't that beautifully written? Yeah. On the other hand, Nick writes about the dreadful conditions in France. That's that top one there. He's telling Ethel all about, I don't think you can read it from there, he's telling her how everything's dreadful and they lost half their men in one, but very stoic about it and saying, well, that just had to be, we lost half our officers, but we just had to go on. That was the way that it was. You know, when I first got these, I used to be really cranky because they'd have this small little space to write on, and they'd start off by saying, you know, I hope this finds you well as it leaves me. Now, half the card's done by the time you've done that. But then I kind of thought about it, and I thought, well, really, if you're at home and you've got your loved ones over there, all you want to really know is that they're well and safe. So those words, as you can imagine, if you had a loved one there, that would be a really important and calming thing for you. So I kind of got over that, and I thought, okay, I understand. Okay, there's lots of celebrations were represented. The Christmas, of course. The majority were of village snow scenes and of holly, very pertinent for the British officers, who were the main people who bought these cards. One soldier writes, I have not had time to write a letter, so I'm sending you this card. I expect I shall be in the firing line by the time you get it. I hope the new year will bring peace and victory to our country for the sake of everyone. There were quite a lot of cards with Christmas puddings depicted. There was a Christmas pudding fund set up in September 1916 in London, and you could donate sixpence, and if you donated sixpence, a pudding was given to a soldier. If you were very rich and you wanted to donate £21, the whole artillery brigade would receive a Christmas dessert. Nearly all occasions had a conceivable postcard for them, and no family member was underlooked. We had cousins, we had nieces, we had grandfathers, we had sons, brothers, we had the whole lot. The main common thread throughout the manufacture of the cards is the use of bold, bright colours, as you can see. This was an attractive contrast to the generally drab and grim surroundings endured by most soldiers. Things like sprays of flowers served to remind the men at home of the most peaceful days before war, while giving no indication to what the soldiers were experiencing, sparing those at home from the true horrors of war. Remember that the morale of the people at home had to be upheld, so very little of the true circumstances in the front were conveyed, hence the cheery, bright designs and the bright colours. This held true for the soldiers too. It's been reported that the most effective weapon used during World War I wasn't the shell or wasn't the tank, it was morale. Perhaps morale was boosted by this card. I saw a big batch of German prisoners coming in near our camp yesterday, and they seemed as happy as Larry. A few messages back home read, cheer up kid, don't be downhearted, pluck up and don't worry about me, I'm all right. So there's that's that top one. And the other one says, to the best and bravest wife in the village, and to let you know that I'm alive and kicking. And the other one, which I thought was quite interesting, we are in clover here compared with Gallipoli. And just a good wash with my own soap and a good blowout on bread and cheese. Betty, there is a thing called margarine made of lard and coconut. Some cards were used to express the intense sense of patriotism, and they were evident in these cards here. Cards such as right is might, and all the Allied flags that you see on a lot of them too. The concept of embroidering regimental badges was slow to make an appearance. When it did eventually catch on, almost every regiment of the British Army was incorporated. These cards were quite popular to collect, and so few are made available now. Especially if they're in good condition, they're quite hard to come by, those ones, and they get quite big prices for them. On the back of the ASC card, George writes in 1916, they caught a spy here last week at our camp. He had plans of everything. I was surprised that they would let that go through, the thing is. The armistice of the 11th of the 11th, 1918 was like a burst of sunshine to the women of embroiders. Cards with the souvenir of the Great War were on sale within days of the signing of the armistice. The armistice was signed at 5 a.m. on the 11th of November, 1918, but didn't come in effect till 6 hours later, hence we have the 11th hour of the 11th day. Even today, 100 years later, there are still many cards available, although through the years, as the years pass, their conditions does deteriorate. Because many cards were proudly displayed on mantelpieces and bedside cabinets, some of them became sun-drenched or stained for exposure to coal dust and nicotine. So where you get the foxing on there, as on some of those there. On the other hand, some still retain some of those beautiful vibrant colours on some of the ones that you've seen, as they've either been framed or tucked away as keepsakes. One other important aspect of these beautiful cards is their history value. A piece of history over 100 years old is held within the frames of these postcards. So if you find a card with the American stars and stripes on it, you know that it has to be after 1917, after actually April 1917, because that's when they came into the war. You can date that. Looking at the cards with the flags of the Allies, it's interesting to see the changes in the Russian flag. It's the one with the eagle head on it. Until 1917, the imperial standard of the Tsar bore a double-headed eagle. And that design actually dates back until 1472. One of the conditions of the revolution was that Russia, who was doing very badly in the war at that time, would actually pull out of the war, and they did in 1917. Vexillology is another aspect of these. You can learn all about the flags. Just by reading the message on the back of the cards gives you a wonderful insight into the time in history. One card reads, "We are going to have a vote over here among the Australians as to conscription, and we are all going to go against it and hope the people out there will do the same." That was in September 1916, so I think it's quite interesting how the soldiers felt about it then. The manufacture of silk postcards declined substantially in 1919, and there were virtually none found after about 1923. An estimated 10 million postcards were produced. A move was made in World War II to produce cards, but they never regained popularity. These cards provide a unique form of social and military history and are an insight into the lives of a generation of men at war. Their beauty comes not from just the skill of the female embroiderers, but the love conveyed in the messages they bear. Messages written on the back of the postcards in the soldiers' own handwriting is a poignant reminder that many of them never made it home. In fact, just considering Australia at this time, in 1914 our population was just under 5 million, 416,809 enlisted, and 60,000 were killed and 156,000 were wounded out of that proportion. Probably to sum up, I once read that the manufacture of these cards with their very emotive wording was a great marketing success story, finding a need and fulfilling it. But for me, this is too clinical an explanation. I like to think that the postcard provided the people at home with a wonderful connection to their loved one so far away from home. As Catherine Delaney says in her article on postcards, in the midst of carnage and devastation, one fragile and exquisite thing had emerged, the silk postcard. Keep the home fire far.